Hello, friends. Welcome to our Christmas compilation special. We've gathered some of our best videos of the year along with your top subscriber requested cases. Be sure to check out our playlists after this special. We guarantee there's some episodes waiting that you haven't discovered yet. Settle in and enjoy this holiday edition of Missing Person Mysteries. I'm Steve Stockton. Happy holidays to you and yours. Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Today, we're going to take a look at some of Australia's unsolved disappearances. Join me. Let's take a walk and see. Now, the Australian continent, with its vast, sparsely populated landscapes and sprawling multicultural cities, holds within its narrative a profound and unsettling collection of stories. Tales of individuals who have vanished without a trace. These are not mere statistics in a national database, but deep, unhealed wounds in the country's psyche. From the sun-drenched beaches of Adelaide to the corridors of power in Canberra, the specter of the missing lingers, a testament to the fragility of life and the agonizing persistence of unresolved questions. The unsolved disappearances of Australians throughout the 20th and 21st centuries have not only left indelible marks on the families of the lost, but have also profoundly shaped the nation's social fabric, legal frameworks, and media landscape. These cases, each a unique tragedy, collectively tell a larger story of innocence lost, of trust betrayed, and of a landscape that can swallow secrets as readily as the tide erases footprints in the sand. First up, the Beaumont children and a nation's awakening. Perhaps no other case has so deeply ingrained itself in the Australian consciousness as the disappearance of the Beaumont children. On Australia Day, January 26, 1966, Jane, age 9, Arna, age 7, and Grant, age 4, Beaumont, left their home in Somerton Park, a suburb of Adelaide, for a short bus trip to the popular Glenelg Beach. They were never seen again. The subsequent investigation, the largest in the nation's history at the time, uncovered a tantalizing yet ultimately frustrating series of clues. Multiple witnesses reported seeing the children in the company of a tall, blond man, and they were seemingly at ease with him. They were playing with him and appeared to be relaxed and enjoying themselves, investigators noted, a detail that chilled a nation unused to such predatory acts against its youngest citizens. The Beaumont case marked a profound turning point in Australian history. The carefree innocence of the 1960s was shattered, replaced by a new and terrifying awareness of the potential for harm to lurk in plain sight. Parents who had once allowed their children the freedom to roam the neighborhood were now gripped with a pervasive fear. As journalist Alan J. Whitaker writes in his book Searching for the Beaumont Children, quote, "The disappearance of the Beaumont children is an Australian nightmare that has never ended. It changed the way Australians thought about their children's safety forever." End quote. The case also highlighted the limitations of police investigations in an era before advanced forensic science and nationwide databases. Despite thousands of leads and numerous suspects over the decades, the fate of the Beaumont children remains a haunting mystery, a stark reminder that even in a seemingly safe and idyllic setting, the unthinkable can occur. The enduring fascination with the Beaumont case is a testament to its cultural impact. It has been the subject of countless books, documentaries, and news reports, each new development or theory reigniting a flicker of hope and a wave of national mourning. The recent excavation of a factory site in 2018, based on a new tip, drew intense media attention, demonstrating the public's unwavering desire for answers, for closure. Though the dig yielded nothing, the collective holding of breath across the nation spoke volumes about the deep scar this single event left on the Australian psyche. Next up, the disappearance of Prime Minister Harold Holt. In a case that continues to fuel conspiracy theories and political intrigue, Australia's 17th Prime Minister, Harold Holt, vanished while swimming at Cheviot Beach in Victoria on December 17, 1967. A seasoned swimmer, Holt entered the turbulent surf and was quickly pulled out to sea. Despite an extensive search and rescue operation, his body was never recovered. The official explanation? A tragic drowning incident, although that has never fully satisfied a skeptical public. Holt's disappearance is unique in the annals of missing person cases, not only for the victim's high profile, but also for the swirling vortex of speculation that immediately followed. Theories ranged from the plausible, that he had had a heart attack or was perhaps taken by a shark, to the outlandish, including that he was a Chinese spy who was picked up by a submarine, or that he faked his own death to be with a lover. As his press secretary, Tony Eggleton, later recalled, quote, "The absence of a body was the thing that really gave rise to so many theories." End quote. The whole case exposed a nation's vulnerability at the highest level. The disappearance of a sitting prime minister was not just a personal tragedy, but a national security concern. The initial response was one of confusion and disbelief, followed by a swift and orderly transition of power. However, the enduring mystery has had a lasting impact on how Australians view their leaders and the institutions that govern them. The case serves as a stark reminder that even those in the highest echelons of power are not immune to the unpredictable forces of nature, or, as some still believe, the machinations of clandestine forces. The phrase, "doing a Harold Holt," has even entered the Australian vernacular as rhyming slang for bolting or disappearing suddenly. Next up, the Adelaide family murders and a reign of terror. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, the city of Adelaide was gripped by a series of gruesome murders that targeted young men. The victims, whose disappearance was often the first indication of foul play, were later found to have been subjected to horrific torture and assault. The perpetrators, a suspected network of influential men, became known as the Family, and the reign of terror left an indelible stain on the city's reputation. The victims of the family murders were often vulnerable young men, hitchhikers, or those living on the fringes of society. Their initial disappearances did not always trigger immediate alarm, a tragic reality that likely emboldened their attackers. The subsequent discovery of their bodies revealed a level of depravity that shocked even seasoned investigators. The case exposed a dark underbelly of Adelaide society, a world of power, privilege, and predatory behavior that operated with impunity for years. The investigation into the family murders was fraught with challenges, including a lack of witnesses, the targeting of a marginalized population, and rumors of a cover-up by powerful individuals. While one man, Bevan Spencer Van Einem, was convicted for the murder of Richard Kelvin, the son of a prominent newsreader, it is widely believed that he did not act alone and that other members of the family escaped justice. The legacy of the family murders is one of deep-seated mistrust and a lingering sense of injustice. It raises profound questions about the vulnerability of young people, the potential for corruption within institutions, and the dark secrets that can fester beneath the surface of a seemingly respectable city. For many Adelaideans, the case remains an open wound, a chilling reminder of a time when their city was stalked by an unseen and malevolent force. Next up, the agonizing limbo of no-body cases, the disappearances of Sarah McDermott and William Tyrrell. The anguish of a missing person case is magnified when there is no body, no crime scene, and no clear understanding of what has transpired. This agonizing limbo is the reality for the families of countless missing Australians, including those of Sarah McDermott and William Tyrrell. Sarah McDermott, a 23-year-old Scottish-Australian woman, vanished from the Kananook railway station car park in Melbourne on July 11, 1990. After getting off a train, she was never seen again. Her car was found in the parking lot with the doors unlocked and her bag on the front seat. The case, which is presumed to be a homicide, has been the subject of long and frustrating investigation. Despite a $1 million reward for information, her body has never been found, and no one has been charged in connection with her disappearance. For her family, the lack of answers is a form of perpetual torture. Her father, Peter, has spoken of the unrelenting grief of not knowing what happened to his daughter. Now, the disappearance of 3-year-old William Tyrrell from his foster grandmother's home in Kendal, New South Wales on September 12, 2014, reignited the national conversation about child safety. Dressed in a Spider-Man costume, William was playing in the garden when he vanished in a matter of moments. The subsequent investigation has been one of the most extensive in Australian history, involving thousands of interviews, large-scale searching, and a $1 million reward. The case has been plagued by false leads, intense media scrutiny, and, in a recent turn of events, the investigation has focused on the foster mother. However, without William's body, a definitive conclusion remains elusive. The Tyrell case, in particular, has highlighted the complex role of the media in modern-day missing persons investigations. The image of the little boy in the Spider-Man suit became iconic, a symbol of stolen innocence that resonated deeply with the public. However, the intense and often sensationalized media coverage has also been a source of immense pressure on the investigation and has led to the spread of misinformation. As former New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller stated, quote, "The media can be a great assistance in these investigations, but it can also be a great hindrance." End quote. Now, the challenges of solving decades-old disappearances are immense. Evidence degrades, memories fade, and witnesses die or move away. However, advancements in forensic science and technology have offered a new hope for cracking these cold cases. DNA technology, in particular, has been a game changer. Cold case review teams across Australia are now re-examining evidence from old cases, hoping for a breakthrough. The use of familial DNA and genetic genealogy, while still in its early stages in Australia, holds the potential to identify perpetrators or the remains of victims by linking their DNA to relatives who have submitted their own DNA to public databases. Beyond forensics, there's a growing recognition of the importance of a multidisciplinary approach to cold case investigations. This includes bringing in criminal psychologists to develop offender profiles, using geographic profiling to narrow down search areas, and fostering greater collaboration between law enforcement agencies at the state and federal levels. The establishment of dedicated cold case units within police forces across the country is a testament to the commitment to seeking justice for the missing and their families, no matter how much time has passed. In closing, the unsolved disappearances of Australia are more than just a collection of cold cases. They are a series of enduring narratives that have left an indelible mark on the nation. The stories of the Beaumont children, Harold Holt, the victims of the family murders, Sarah McDermott and William Tyrell, are etched into the country's collective memory, serving as cautionary tales, sources of enduring grief, and catalysts for social and legal change. These cases have stripped away a sense of naive security, forcing Australians to confront the darker aspects of their society. They've prompted difficult conversations about child safety, the accountability of those in power, and the effectiveness of the justice system itself. The media's role in these cases has been both a powerful tool for raising awareness and a source of controversy, highlighting the delicate balance between public interest and the integrity of an investigation. For the families of the missing, the pain is a constant companion, a life sentence of not knowing. Their tireless advocacy for their loved ones has kept these cases in the public eye and has been a driving force behind the push for new investigative techniques and legislative reforms. While the files on these unsolved disappearances may gather dust in police archives, the stories they contain remain vividly alive in the Australian consciousness. They are a haunting reminder that some questions may never be answered, that some wounds may never fully heal, and that the search for the vanished is, in many ways, a search for part of the nation's own lost innocence. The unsettled dust of these cases continues to swirl, a poignant and persistent symbol of the unresolved grief and the enduring mystery that lies at the heart of the Australian experience. Hello, friends. Welcome to our latest video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some unsolved wilderness disappearances in the Shoshone National Forest. Join me. Let's walk and see. Now, the Shoshone National Forest, a sprawling expanse of rugged wilderness in northwestern Wyoming, is a land of breathtaking beauty and profound solitude. Its 2.4 million acres encompass jagged peaks, dense forests, and alpine meadows, a testament to the raw, untamed spirit of the American West. But beneath this veneer of natural splendor lies a darker, more unsettling reality. For in the vastness of the Shoshone, people have vanished, their fates seemingly swallowed by the immense and unforgiving landscape, leaving behind only questions that echo in the whispering pines. The most prominent and haunting of these is the disappearance of Amy Rowe Bechtel, a promising Olympic marathon hopeful who ran into the forest one summer day in 1997 and was never seen again. Her case, along with the unsettling context of other, less documented disappearances and the inherent perils of the wilderness, casts a long shadow over this majestic terrain. The Shoshone National Forest, the first federally protected national forest in the United States, is a formidable wilderness. Its terrain is a dramatic tapestry of deep canyons, roaring rivers, and towering mountains, including Gannett Peak, the highest point in Wyoming. The forest is home to a diverse and often dangerous array of wildlife, from grizzly bears and mountain lions to wolves and elk. The weather can be brutally unpredictable, with summer snowstorms and sudden dramatic temperature drops posing a constant threat to even the most experienced outdoor enthusiast. It's a place where the line between adventure and peril is perilously thin, a reality that has been tragically underscored by those who have ventured into its depths and failed to return. On the morning of July 24, 1997, Amy Rowe Bechtel, a vibrant and fiercely dedicated 24-year-old runner, was preparing for a 10K race she was organizing in the Shoshone National Forest. A resident of Lander, a town nestled on the edge of the forest, Amy was intimately familiar with the rugged trails that snaked through the Wind River Range. After running some errands in town, she drove her white Toyota station wagon to the Loop Road, a scenic route that winds its way through the forest, to preview the race course. It was a routine she had likely performed countless times before, but on this particular day, the familiar path would lead her into an enduring mystery. Her husband, Steve Bechtel, a well-known rock climber, returned home later that afternoon to find Amy gone. As the hours stretched into evening with no word from his wife, a growing sense of unease settled in. By 10:30 p.m., Steve contacted the authorities and a search was initiated. In the early hours of the following morning, Amy's car was discovered parked on the side of a dirt road near the Burnt Gulch area of the Loop Road. The doors were unlocked, and her keys, sunglasses, and a to-do list were found inside. Her wallet, however, was missing. But there was no sign of a struggle, no indication of what might have happened. Amy Rowe Bechtel had simply vanished. The initial search for Amy was one of the largest in Wyoming's history. Hundreds of volunteers, law enforcement officers, and search and rescue teams scoured the rugged terrain on foot, on horseback, and from the air. Hopes of finding her alive, perhaps injured after a fall or wildlife encounter, slowly faded with each passing day. The search was exhaustive, but it yielded not a single clue to her whereabouts. Quote, "We should have found Amy Bechtel if she were a runner up there and nothing else entered the picture," end quote. That's from Fremont County Sheriff Dave King, his words hinting at the sinister turn the investigation was about to take. With the absence of any physical evidence suggesting an accident or animal attack, investigators began to consider the possibility of foul play. Their attention soon focused on the closest person to Amy, her husband, Steve Bechtel. By all accounts, their marriage appeared to be a happy one, a union of two passionate outdoor athletes. However, as investigators delved deeper, a more complex picture began to emerge. Friends of the couple offered conflicting reports of their relationship, with some describing Steve as possessive and prone to belittling his wife. The discovery of Steve's personal journals further fueled suspicion. In them, he had penned violent, disturbing writings, some of which described the act of killing. Steve maintained that these were merely song lyrics and creative writing, an outlet for his frustrations and not a reflection of his intentions. However, for law enforcement, these were a significant red flag. Steve Bechtel's alibi for the time of Amy's disappearance was that he had been rock climbing with a friend in a different part of the forest. While his friend corroborated his account, investigators found inconsistencies in his timeline. A crucial piece of eyewitness testimony also cast a shadow of doubt. A woman who had been in the area where Amy's car was found reported seeing a truck matching the description of Steve's speeding away with a blonde woman in the passenger seat. The turning point in the relationship between Steve Bechtel and the investigators came when he was asked to take a polygraph test. On the advice of his lawyer, he refused. This decision, while his legal right, was seen by many, including law enforcement and the public, as an admission of guilt. From that point on, Steve Bechtel became the primary suspect in his wife's disappearance. He has consistently maintained his innocence, though, stating, quote, "I was pretty blown away. This is not cool," end quote. In the years following Amy's disappearance, Steve had her legally declared dead and has since remarried. The cloud of suspicion, however, has never fully dissipated. Now, while the investigation into Steve Bechtel stalled, another, more terrifying possibility emerged. Dale Wayne Eaton, a convicted murderer and suspected serial killer, was known to have been in the Lander area around the time of Amy's disappearance. Eaton was a predator of the most chilling kind, a man who haunted the remote highways and wildernesses of the West, preying on vulnerable women. In 1988, 9 years before Amy vanished, Eaton abducted, assaulted, and did away with Lisa Marie Kimmel. Her case bore some unsettling similarities to what might have befallen Amy Bechtel. Kimmel was traveling alone when she was targeted. Her body was later found in the North Platte River. A crucial piece of evidence in Kimmel's case was her car, which Eaton had buried on his property. It was a chilling trophy of his crime. Investigators have long suspected Eaton of being the Great Basin Killer, a serial murderer responsible for a string of slayings across Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah. His method of operation often involved targeting women who were alone in the remote areas. A chilling piece of information that connects Eaton to the Shoshone National Forest is that he was captured there after escaping from custody on an unrelated kidnapping charge. He was a man comfortable and familiar with the very wilderness where Amy disappeared. Now, Eaton has never been charged in connection with Amy Bechtel's disappearance and has reportedly refused to discuss the case with investigators. Without a body or any physical evidence linking him to the scene, the theory of his involvement remains just that, a theory. Yet, for many, it's a more plausible explanation than the idea that her husband, a man with no prior history of violence, could have committed such a crime and disposed of her body so flawlessly that not a single trace has ever been found. The specter of Dale Wayne Eaton looms large over the case, a chilling reminder of the other dangers that lurk in the wild. Now, while the case of Amy Roe Bechtel is indeed the most well-known of the Shoshone National Forest mysteries, it is important to acknowledge the broader context of disappearances in this vast wilderness and the adjacent Wind River Indian Reservation. Over the years, other individuals, including hunters and hikers, have all gone missing in the forest, their stories often receiving far less media attention. The sheer scale and ruggedness of the terrain mean that a simple misstep, a sudden turn in the weather, or an unfortunate encounter with wildlife can have fatal consequences, with the wilderness itself becoming the final resting place, the secrets of what transpired locked away in its forever silent embrace. Furthermore, the Wind River Indian Reservation, which borders the Shoshone National Forest, faces a crisis of missing and murdered indigenous people. Indigenous individuals, particularly women and young girls, disappear and are often murdered at alarmingly high rates, their cases receiving inadequate attention from law enforcement and the media. While the circumstances of these disappearances are often different from those of a solo runner on a forest trail, they're a critical and tragic part of the larger story of those who've been lost in the region. The grief and unanswered questions of these families are a somber counterpoint to the more sensationalized wilderness mystery narrative. The Shoshone National Forest remains a place of profound beauty and unsettling mystery. The case of Amy Roe Bechtel, with its two compelling and conflicting narratives, continues to captivate and frustrate those who seek answers. Was she indeed the victim of a domestic dispute that escalated to a horrific conclusion, with her body hidden so expertly by someone who knew the wilderness intimately? Or did she have the tragic misfortune of crossing paths with a predatory serial killer who saw in the lone runner an easy target? Without new evidence, a confession, or the discovery of her remains, these questions will likely continue to hang in the crisp mountain air. The silence that surrounds her disappearance is a testament to the power of the wilderness to conceal, to erase, and to hold its secrets close. The unsolved mysteries of the Shoshone National Forest serve as a haunting reminder that in the heart of even the most breathtaking landscapes, darkness can and does exist, and that for some, a journey into the wild can become a one-way trip, sadly, leaving behind only an aching void and the endless echo of unanswered questions. Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Today, we're going to be taking an inquiry into missing people and places with malevolent names. Join me. Let's take a walk and see. On the night of June 20th, 1965, 4 young men drove into the Mojave Desert, 90 miles northwest of Las Vegas, seeking a thrill. Their destination? A remote, foreboding limestone chasm, a geothermal abyss known as Devil's Hole. Ignoring the warning signs, Paul Gianconteri, 19, David Rose, 20, and Bill Alter, 19, scrambled under a fence and descended to a rock shelf overlooking the pool. Donning rudimentary scuba gear, the three slipped into what has been described as womb-like waters, a constant 92 degrees Fahrenheit. But sometime after midnight, the thrill turned to terror. Paul failed to resurface. In a frantic attempt to find his friend, David dove back in, followed by Bill. Bill descended 175 feet before losing sight of David, who vanished into the vast liquid darkness. He was the only one of the three to emerge. A massive rescue effort was launched, with divers plumbing the caverns, checking for air pockets where the boys might have survived. They found nothing. The bodies of Paul Gianconteri and his brother-in-law, David Rose, were never recovered. They were simply gone, swallowed by a hole named for the devil. This tragedy serves as a stark entry point into a deeper, more unsettling inquiry. What is the nature of the connection between places bearing strange and malevolent names, devil, diablo, witch, ghost, and the human tragedies of disappearance and death that so often seem to cluster around them? Are these names mere linguistic artifacts, historical footnotes on a map, or do they signify something more profound about the landscape itself, perhaps a warning etched into our geography? To even approach an answer, this video will employ a multidisciplinary analysis, examining these locations through the lens of toponymy, which is the study of place names, folklore, environmental psychology, and Fortean theory, named after Charles Fort, which investigates anomalous phenomena. These ominously named locations are not merely passive backdrops for tragedy, but are often active participants. They're liminal zones where the boundaries between myth and reality, sacred and profane, presence and absence become terrifyingly thin. The act of disappearance, in these contexts, represents the ultimate, irreversible crossing of that threshold. The names themselves are the warnings posted at the gate, markers of a territory where the familiar rules of the world may no longer apply. To understand the power of a name like Devil's Hole, one must first understand the science of naming itself. Toponymy, the academic study of place names, posits that names are not arbitrary labels, but rather rich historical and psychological data points. Derived from the Greek topos, or place, and onoma, name, the field operates on the foundational principle that every place name has a meaning, whether it describes a physical feature, records evidence of human occupation, or commemorates an event. And friends, the United States itself is literally littered with diabolical toponyms. There are at least 96 features named Devil's Canyon, 83 named Devil's Elbow, and 34 named Devil's Hole, among hundreds of others. Now, these names aren't random. They're a cultural record of perception, fear, and experience. Now, the names we assign to places profoundly influence our relationship with them, a concept central to environmental psychology. A sense of place, if you will, refers to the complex bond between people and spatial settings, the two-way transaction where we shape our places and, in turn, they shape us. A name like Devil's Punch Bowl or Hell's Half Acre immediately establishes a negative sense of place, priming visitors for an experience of danger or awe. This psychological priming can have tangible effects. Research in perception has shown that fear can physically alter our interpretation of the environment. For example, studies have found that people consistently overestimate vertical distances when looking down from a high place, and this bias correlates directly with their self-reported fear of heights. This suggests that a feature named Devil's Peak may be perceived as objectively taller, steeper, and more dangerous than an identical neutrally named landform, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of peril. A fascinating parallel can be drawn to the recently identified psychological phenomenon of alexithymia, the fear of using personal names in conversation, which is strongly linked to social anxiety and psychological distress. One could argue that the cultural form of alexithymia exists around these malevolent place names as well. The name itself becomes so freighted with negative connotations and folkloric dread that it induces a collective state of fear and avoidance, transforming a simple geographical feature into a locus of anxiety. The profusion of devil names across the American landscape cannot be separated from the history of colonial expansion. As historian James Loewen has argued, many of these names are not organic descriptions, but acts of cultural and psychological warfare. Christian European settlers, viewing indigenous religions as a form of devil worship, often deliberately applied strange or diabolical names to Native American sacred sites. This act of renaming served to desecrate the location, erase its original spiritual significance, and superimpose a new, fearful narrative. Two of the most prominent examples are Devil's Tower in Wyoming and Mount Diablo in California. Before American exploration, Devil's Tower was known to the Lakota and other Plains tribes by names like Mato Tapilia or Bear Lodge, a name directly tied to their sacred creation myths. The current name was bestowed by an expedition led by Colonel Richard Irving Dodge, who claimed the Indians called it Bad God's Tower, a translation that's highly suspect. It's widely believed to be either a deliberate mistranslation or an intentional change to supplant the indigenous worldview with a Christian one. Similarly, California's Mount Diablo was a sacred creation site for local tribes. Its current name stems from a misunderstanding by Spanish soldiers. After a group of Native Americans seemingly vanished into a thicket, the unnerved soldiers dubbed the spot Monte Diablo, or Thicket of the Devil. Later, American settlers mistook Monte, thicket, for Mount, and erroneously applied the name of a small spooky grove to the entire 3,849-foot sacred peak. Now, the act of applying a diabolical name to a landscape, however, is not a static historical event, but the initiation of a powerful feedback loop. The name itself generates fear. This fear, in turn, primes people to interpret any subsequent ambiguous or tragic event, a disappearance, a strange sound, an untimely death, as confirmation of the name's malevolent accuracy. An event like the 1965 drownings at Devil's Hole becomes easier to process through the supernatural lens provided by the name, the devil took them, than through the complex realities of hydrogeology, nitrogen narcosis, and pure human error. This tragedy then becomes a new, potent layer of folklore, permanently fused to the place's identity, and the story of the missing teens is now inseparable from Devil's Hole. This reinforced reputation for danger and mystery attracts a new generation of thrill seekers, like the teens themselves, who were possibly inspired by earlier reports of the Hole's strangeness, or those with darker fascinations, like cult leader Charles Manson, who became obsessed with the site. This increases the statistical probability of further incidents, which further cements the location's dark renown. In this cycle, the name is not merely a label, it's an active agent in the creation and perpetuation of a place's malevolent identity. The process by which a sacred place is overwritten with a profane name, and the dark consequences that seem to follow, is nowhere more evident than in the histories of California's Mount Diablo and Wyoming's Devil's Tower. These two iconic peaks serve as powerful case studies in toponymic erasure and the unsettling resonance between myth and modern tragedy. Now, long before it was named for the devil, Mount Diablo was the center of the universe. For the Ohlone and Miwok peoples, it was the point of creation, a sacred peak known by names like Tushtak, meaning at the dawn of time. Their myths tell of a great flood that covered the world, leaving only the summits of Mount Diablo and a neighboring peak as islands. From here, creator beings like Coyote and Eagle brought forth a new world and new people. The mountain was not a place of fear, but the very cradle of existence, a site of immense spiritual power. This sacred foundation was overwritten by a ghost story. In 1805, a Spanish military expedition pursued a group of Chupcan Indians who retreated into a dense willow thicket in what is now known as North Concord. As darkness fell, the soldiers, unnerved by strange lights and noises, decided not to follow. By morning, the natives were gone, having seemingly vanished. The frightened soldiers, steeped in a Catholic worldview where the devil was a real and active force, dubbed the area Monte Diablo, Thicket of the Devil. The name first appeared on a map in 1824, referring to an Indian village near the thicket. Through a crucial linguistic error, later American explorers mistook the Spanish monte for mount and transferred the name from the localized spooky thicket to the entire massive peak that dominated the horizon. Today, the theme of disappearance, born from that original legend, continues to haunt the mountain. While the California Department of Justice Missing Persons Database doesn't attribute specific cases directly to a supernatural cause on the mountain, the vast wilderness of Mount Diablo State Park is a place where people can and do become lost. We've covered cases there. The founding legend of inexplicable vanishing resonates in modern folklore of giant, ghostly figures seen near the summit and the discovery of an old plane crash site. The mountain retains its original mythic function as a place where people can and do disappear. Continuing, in the plains of northeastern Wyoming, another sacred tower, as I mentioned, tells a similar story. For numerous tribes, including the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, the stunning igneous intrusion we call Devil's Tower is known as Bear Lodge or Bear's Teepee. Its origin is explained in a powerful and recurring myth. In most versions, a group of children, often young girls or boys, are pursued by a ferocious giant bear. Praying for salvation, they're lifted into the sky as the rock beneath them miraculously rises from the earth. The bear, relentless, claws at the sides of the rising tower, leaving the deep vertical striations that mark its surface to this day. The tower is a place of refuge, a sanctuary from a monstrous threat. This sacred narrative was supplanted in the 1870s when Colonel Richard Irving Dodge's expedition named it Devil's Tower. The act remains controversial, viewed as a deliberate erasure of indigenous culture, and petitions to restore the original name continue to this day. The new name, however, brought with it a new kind of darkness. In 1965, the ancient myth of a monstrous threat to children found a horrific modern echo. 9-year-old Denise Clinton was kidnapped from a motel in Kansas City. For 2 years, her fate was unknown. Then, in 1967, 2 cowboys discovered her skeletal remains in a shallow grave in a ravine directly in the shadow of Devil's Tower. The case remains unsolved. For Denise's sister, Diana Clinton White, the landmark became a symbol of ultimate evil. Quote, "This place became the evil in my head and my heart," end quote, she recalled, decades later, upon visiting the site to place a memorial. The tower, once a mythic sanctuary for children, became the backdrop for a child's demise. Even the rational dangers of the tower seemed to follow a mythic pattern. Of the 7 climbing fatalities recorded at the site, most occur not on the ascent, but during the rappel down, a perilous descent from a place that, in legend, was a refuge one could not easily leave. These tragedies associated with these places exhibit a disturbing resonance with their foundational myths or the etymology of their names. This is not a claim of direct causation, but a recognition of a powerful thematic parallel that gives these locations their deep, unsettling power. The landscape itself seems to function as a stage where ancient dramas are reenacted in modern, horrific forms. At Mount Diablo, whose name derives from a story of inexplicable vanishing, the enduring mystery is disappearance. At Devil's Tower, the Bear's Lodge, whose myths tell of a monstrous bear threatening children, the most infamous modern crime is the demise of a child left in its shadow. The stories we tell about a place, and the names we give it, appear to create a potent archetypical framework that shapes how we experience and interpret the tragedies that unfold there. The most potent landscapes of fear are often those defined by absence, voids, chasms, and holes that descend into an unseen underworld. These are places where people and things can disappear, not just from sight, but seemingly from the world itself. Devil's Hole in Nevada and Devil's Kettle in Minnesota are two of the most compelling examples, places where a hole in the earth creates an unfillable hole in a story. Now, the 1965 disappearance of Paul Gianconteri and David Rose remains the defining event at Devil's Hole. The sole survivor of the initial trio of divers, Bill Alter, gave a simple haunting account to reporters. Quote, "He got ahead of me and I lost him. I went to a depth of 175 feet and couldn't find him." End quote. The man who led the subsequent rescue attempt, veteran diver Jim Houts, provided a description that transformed the site from a geological feature into an otherworldly portal. "It's beautiful in there," Houts told reporters. "It goes straight down 160 feet like a pipe, then opens into a room. We don't know what the next room is or if it's a room at all. It's like infinity." Hout's team found the divers' gear, a mask, a fin, a flashlight, on ledges as deep as 325 feet, but no bodies. He was convinced the hole was far deeper than anyone imagined, claiming once they dropped a weighted line over 900 feet without hitting the bottom. This central tragedy is woven into a much larger tapestry of strangeness. The local Timbusha Shoshone people have long warned of the hole's dangers, with folklore telling of water babies who snatch children from the surface, and a malevolent giant named So Apise who haunts the caves and devours victims. The hole is also the exclusive home of the Devil's Hole pupfish, one of the rarest and most endangered fish on Earth, a tiny, fragile life form that somehow survives on a single shallow rock shelf in this impossibly hostile environment. Adding to the anomaly, the water in this landlocked desert pool acts as a seismic bellwether, sloshing violently in response to major earthquakes thousands of miles away, in places like Japan and Indonesia, proving its connection to a vast, unseen subterranean water system. This collection of high strangeness has attracted dark fascination, most notoriously from the aforementioned Charles Manson, who became obsessed with Devil's Hole, believing it to be a portal to an underground kingdom where his family could shelter from the apocalypse. Now, hundreds of miles to the northeast, in Minnesota's Judge C.R. Magny State Park, another diabolical hole has captured the public imagination. Here, the Brule River splits at a rock outcropping. One fork cascades down a 50-foot waterfall and continues on its way. The other, however, vanishes entirely into a large pothole known as the Devil's Kettle. For decades, the destination of this water was a complete mystery. Folk experiments became a local pastime, with visitors throwing in ping-pong balls, logs, dyes, and even, according to rumor, a car, none of which were ever seen again. In 2017, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, or the DNR, announced they had solved the puzzle. Hydrologists measured the water's flow rate both above and below the falls and found the volumes to be nearly identical, 123 cubic feet per second above versus 121 below. This conclusion was that the water from the kettle must be rejoining the main river from an unseen point just downstream. As for the disappearing objects, scientists theorized they were simply pulverized by the unbelievably powerful system of recirculating currents inside the kettle. Yet, in the public mind, the mystery persists. Crucially, a planned confirmatory test using a fluorescent dye to pinpoint the resurgence point was never conducted. This has allowed skepticism to flourish. The resistance to a rational, if unconfirmed, explanation reveals a cultural preference for an enchanting mystery over mundane hydrology. A place name like Devil's Kettle seems to demand a more dramatic narrative, one that has been eagerly supplied by local media and fiction, including a murder mystery novel centered on the falls and its reputation for making things disappear. These holes in the landscape function as powerful psychological anchors for our deepest fears of the unknown and of oblivion. They are literal voids that cry out to be filled with narrative. When a person vanishes into such a place and their body is not recovered, it becomes a permanent, unbearable hole in the story of their life. There is no final chapter, no closure. The human mind, a natural storytelling machine, abhors this narrative vacuum and rushes to fill it. The name, Devil's Hole, and the physical nature of the place, a dark, seemingly bottomless abyss, provide the raw materials for a new, more mythic narrative. The story ceases to be about a tragic diving accident and becomes one of a person being taken by the abyss or having entered infinity. This narrative, while terrifying for sure, is more psychologically resonant than the painful, unresolved truth. It transforms a random tragedy into an event of cosmic significance, confirming the malevolent power of the place. The hole in the ground becomes a portal to another world, and the unfortunate missing person becomes a permanent, chilling resident of the myth. Now, the geography of fear extends beyond diabolical names to encompass places branded by historical trauma, particularly those also associated with witches and ghosts. These names act as permanent markers on the landscape, memorials to persecution and tragedy that continue to shape a location's identity and influence how new events are perceived. Now, no place in America is more defined by this phenomenon than Salem, Massachusetts, not too far from where I'm at right now. The city's entire modern identity is built upon the infamous witch trials of 1692, during which 20 people were executed for alleged witchcraft. Today, Salem has processed and capitalized on this dark history, transforming it into a tourist destination filled with witch museums, pagan and Wiccan shops, and guided tours that separate witchcraft myths from reality. The name Salem is now synonymous with witch. This is a fate that surrounding towns actively tried to avoid. The original epicenter of the hysteria, Salem Village, was officially renamed Danvers in 1752 in a clear attempt to escape the stigma, an effort that ultimately failed as the history was too powerful to be erased by a simple name change. The toponymy of persecution is not unique to Salem. Across the United Kingdom, names like Witch Crags, Witch Now, a Roman signal station, and the Witch's Stone in Scotland, or even Cackle Street in East Sussex, England, serve as informal memorials marking sites of folk belief, accusation, or execution. These names function as a form of collective memory, ensuring that the history of persecution remains embedded in the very soil. And then the belief in ghosts is a universal human experience. And our maps are dotted with the names of places where spirits are said to linger. From the S-21 prison in Cambodia, haunted by victims of genocide, to the Tower of London and Edinburgh Castle, sites of centuries of violence, the idea that intense emotional events can leave a spiritual residue is a global phenomenon. Paranormal theory offers a framework for this belief with the stone tape theory. This hypothesis suggests that building materials, particularly those containing quartz or significant amounts of water even, can act like a recording medium, absorbing the energy of traumatic or emotionally charged events and replaying them under certain atmospheric or psychological conditions. This provides a quasi-scientific metaphor for a place possessing a memory. This concept is most clearly articulated in the idea of residual hauntings, which are believed to be the most common type of paranormal activity. Unlike intelligent hauntings, a residual haunting is a non-conscious loop of a past event, like an old film loop playing over and over and over. The classic reports of apparitions seen walking down the same hallway, appearing in the same window, or sounds of footsteps repeating the same path are all characteristics of residual hauntings. Some theorists have connected this to a controversial idea of water memory, suggesting that water molecules within a structure's materials could hold an imprint of the past, which is then replayed. So, a name like Witch Hill or Ghost Road does more than simply denote a location. It functions as a powerful mnemonic trigger for a community's collective trauma. It effectively keeps the stone tape of a historical tragedy perpetually cued for playback. The name itself becomes the primary carrier of the story, a permanent public marker of the original event. When a new, unsettling incident occurs in such a place, for instance, a hiker goes missing on a place named Witch Hill, it's rarely perceived as a new, isolated event. Instead, the community's response is conditioned by the name. The disappearance is immediately framed by the original trauma, interpreted not as a simple accident, but as a replay or an echo of the past. The narrative becomes which hill claimed another one. In this way, the name acts as a cultural and psychological trigger, ensuring that the original trauma is never fully laid to rest, as instead projected onto any new tragedy, creating a landscape where the past is never truly past. Now, while these psychological and folkloric explanations do provide compelling frameworks, they don't account for the sheer breadth and recurring nature of the strangeness reported at some of these locations. For a more radical but comprehensive model, one can turn to the work of pioneering paranormal researcher John Keel. Keel's theories offer a way to synthesize the disparate phenomena, disappearances, creature sightings, strange lights, and malevolent place names, into a single unified theory of anomalous geography known as the window area hypothesis. Now, Keel's central thesis is the existence of window areas, as he calls them, specific geographical locations that experience an unusually high concentration of diverse and recurring anomalous phenomena. Keel argued that these phenomena are not isolated events, but are all manifestations of a single, intelligent, and often deceptive source. He dismissed the simplistic extraterrestrial hypothesis, instead proposing the existence of ultra-terrestrials or other intelligences, or OINTS, as he called them, beings that coexist with humanity but operate on a different frequency or in a parallel space-time continuum. Heady stuff here, able to cross over into our reality at will. The manifestations of this intelligence are culturally specific, appearing as fairies and demons in one era, mystery airships in another, and UFOs or creatures like the Mothman in our own time. Crucially, Keel provided a testable physical component to his theory, claiming that these windows often correlate with areas of significant magnetic deviation or geological faults. He noted that every state in the United States has from 2 to 10 windows, and that many of these hotspots, like Wanacue, New Jersey, or Ravenna, Ohio, are centered directly over known magnetic anomalies that can be identified on geological survey maps. The primary locations examined in this video do fit the window area profile remarkably well. Both Devil's Tower and Mount Diablo are prominent geological intrusions, volcanic in origin, making them plausible sites for magnetic anomalies. Both are ancient sacred sites with deep mythologies invoking powerful non-human entities, the Great Bear and Creator spirits, which does align with Keel's model of the phenomenon adapting its appearance to the local culture's belief system. Devil's Hole, with its unique geothermal properties, its direct link to a vast, deep aquifer, and its uncanny sensitivity to distant seismic events, is a prime candidate for a geological and paranormal anomaly. The clustering of high strangeness at the site, the inexplicable disappearances, the singular pupfish, the ancient myths of water monsters, and the modern horror of the Manson connection, is the hallmark of a Keelian window. From this Fordian perspective, the application of diabolical place names can be reinterpreted not as mere projection of settler fear, but as a form of folk diagnosis. It represents a pre-scientific culture's attempt to label and understand a genuine, recurring, and often frightening environmental anomaly. The devil, diablo, or witch in the name is a folk entomological effort to describe the tangible experience of a window area. Indigenous cultures, with their deep holistic connection to the land, perceive this same anomalous energy. Now, they didn't necessarily frame it as evil, but as powerful and sacred, incorporating it into their cosmologies as a place of creation or a site for vision quest. Later, colonial settlers encountered the same unsettling phenomena, namely strange lights, odd sounds, a palpable sense of presence, but lacked the cultural framework to interpret it as sacred. Drawing from their Christian-centric worldview, they interpreted the inexplicable energy as demonic. In this model, the name is not the source of the fear. The name is the result of a direct encounter with a genuinely strange place. The folklore, the disappearances, and the name itself are all symptoms of the same underlying location-based cause. The name becomes a historical record of human interaction with the anomaly. The unsettling relationship between malevolent place names and human disappearances defies any single, simple explanation. Instead, these locations exist at the confluence of several powerful interpretive models. The psychological and folkloric model suggests that ominous names are cultural projections that create a self-perpetuating cycle of fear, where the name itself primes people for tragedy. The historical trauma model posits that these names are memorials to past atrocities, and new tragedies are inevitably viewed as echoes of the original event, keeping the stone tape of memory playing on a loop. And finally, the Fortean model proposes a radical alternative, that these names are a form of folk diagnosis for genuinely anomalous zones or windows, where strange phenomena, including disappearances, cluster for reasons tied to the physical environment that we do not yet understand. The power of places like Devil's Hole, Devil's Tower, and Mount Diablo lies precisely in their liminality. There are thresholds between the known and the unknown, between science and myth, between recorded history and the eternal present of folklore. There are places where all these explanatory frameworks seem to apply simultaneously, creating a reality that is layered, complex, and deeply unsettling. The act of disappearance is the ultimate expression of this liminality. A disappearance is the one event that most profoundly resists explanation and closure, forcing us to confront a void in our understanding. A person who vanishes at Devil's Hole or in the shadow of Devil's Tower is not merely missing. Instead, they have been absorbed into the landscape's mythology, with their story becoming a new, terrifying verse in an ancient song. Whether the devil resides in the geology of the land, in the traumatic memory of a culture, or in what author John Keel called the dark corners of our mind, the places that bear his name serve as essential, frightening landmarks on our cultural map. They chart the frontiers of our knowledge and remind us that for all our science and reason, there are still places on Earth where the story ends with a question mark and where people can walk over a threshold and simply be gone. Now, the Angeles National Forest, a sprawling expanse of over 700,000 acres, serves as a rugged crown to the Los Angeles basin. It's often affectionately referred to as LA's backyard playground, a testament to its role as a vital recreational escape for millions living in the adjacent metropolis. Its accessible trails, soaring peaks, and shaded canyons offer a quick and profound immersion into the wild. Yet this idyllic image belies a more formidable truth. The forest is a place of rugged terrain and harsh vegetation. It's a genuine wilderness, where the line between recreation and peril is perilously thin. For decades, its canyons have echoed with stories of those who ventured in and did not return, making it a landscape with a long and often tragic memory. On June 22, 2025, this unforgiving playground became the setting for another baffling disappearance. Monica Reza, a 60-year-old hiker, vanished from the well-trodden trails near Mount Waterman. Her case triggered a massive multi-agency search operation, drew intense public scrutiny, and ultimately settled into the quiet, uncertain status of an open and ongoing investigation. The disappearance of an experienced hiker in good health and in familiar territory, from the midst of her own hiking party, presents a profound mystery. It's a case that not only highlights the inherent dangers of the wilderness, but also serves as a modern parable about the limits of technology, the complexities of public involvement in official investigations, and the enduring power of the wild to defy human understanding. In this video, we're going to provide an exhaustive examination of the Monica Reza case, from her last known movements to the somber conclusion of the initial search, placing her story within the broader, darker context of the many who have been lost in the San Gabriel Mountains. Join me. Let's walk and see. Now, the narrative of any missing person case begins with the last confirmed moments of their presence. In the case of Monica Reza, these moments are both deceptively simple and maddeningly ambiguous. Reconstructing the timeline of June 22, 2025, reveals a standard Sunday morning hike, then inexplicably deviated into a lasting mystery, creating an information vacuum that was almost immediately filled with questions, speculation, and a community's desperate search for answers. Monica Reza was not a novice lost in an alien environment. The 60-year-old Los Angeles County resident was, by all official accounts, an experienced and well-prepared hiker. Described as a petite woman, standing 4 foot 11 inches tall and weighing approximately 101 pounds, she had gray hair and brown eyes and was known to be in good shape. Sergeant John Gilbert of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, the LASD, Crescenta Valley Station, confirmed this, stating that Reza and her friends, quote, went out weekly to hike in the area, end quote. This familiarity with the terrain and regular hiking schedule makes her disappearance all the more perplexing. Unlike many cases that involve ill-prepared or inexperienced individuals, Reza's profile suggests she possessed the skills and knowledge to navigate the challenges of the San Gabriel Mountains. She had no known health conditions that would have contributed to her disappearance, further deepening the mystery. The day began as a routine outing. Monica Reza was hiking with two companions in the popular Mount Waterman area of the Angeles National Forest. The last confirmed sighting of her occurred at approximately 9:10 a.m. near the 6,000-foot gate on Angeles Crest Highway, a location also identified as 60,001 Trailhead Avenue. The critical event, as reported by the authorities, involved the separation of the group. According to the Crescenta Valley Weekly, the trio split up when one of the hikers went ahead to retrieve their car, leaving Monica and the third hiker to continue together. It was at this point that the narrative fractures. Reza became separated from her remaining companion. The most crucial and enigmatic detail provided by officials is that she, quote, left the trail for an unknown reason near the ridgeline between the elevations of 7,000 and 8,000 feet, end quote. This single action, or inaction, is the pivot upon which the entire case turns. There was no report of a fall, an argument, or a planned rendezvous point. One moment she was there, and the next she was gone. A comment on a social media post from someone claiming to be a neighbor later added a layer of community disbelief, quoting here, "How this could happen in a group setting is beyond me. Her family and the neighborhood is devastated." In the immediate aftermath, the flow of information was inconsistent, a common feature of fast-moving crises, but one that fueled public confusion. An early discrepancy emerged regarding Reza's clothing. While most official reports and news outlets eventually settled on a consistent description, a red, long-sleeve shirt, green hiking pants, and hiking shoes, some initial reports were less specific, mentioning only a long-sleeve shirt. This minor confusion underscored a larger problem: the lack of a clear, detailed public narrative from her companions or the authorities about the precise circumstances of her disappearance. The information void was quickly filled by burgeoning public investigation on social media platforms, particularly Reddit. Members of the Southern California hiking community, many of whom were familiar with the trail and standard hiking practices, began asking pointed and logical questions that highlighted the narrative's apparent gaps. Their queries went straight to the heart of the matter. What was the timeline for reporting her missing? How long was the delay between her separation and the call to law enforcement? What were the identities of her companions? Were they experienced hikers as well? Why did the group separate in the first place? A practice often discouraged among hiking groups. One online commenter claimed the group was, quote, jogging quickly on the trail, end quote, while another Reddit user noted that a Facebook group dedicated to the search mentioned they were running back from the summit. This led to questions about why they were running and whether Reza was appropriately dressed for trail running. And perhaps most critically, users in the Facebook group and on Reddit questioned why an experienced hiker like Reza was reportedly without a water supply. These questions were not born of idle gossip, but of a logical attempt to reconcile the official story with the established norms of hiking culture. For experienced hikers, the idea of a companion simply vanishing without a trace and the lack of basic supplies like water seemed incongruous. The ambiguity surrounding the separation created a space for skepticism and alternative theories to quickly grow, turning a personal tragedy into a very public puzzle. The response to Monica Reza's disappearance was immediate, massive, and a testament to the highly organized and collaborative nature of Southern California's search and rescue community. Yet, the sheer scale of the operation also served to highlight the immense difficulty of its task. For 8 days, a small army of professionals and volunteers threw every available resource at the mountain, only to be met with a stubborn and unyielding silence. The operational lead for the search fell to the LASD's Crescenta Valley Station and its affiliated volunteer unit, the Montrose Search and Rescue SAR Team. Founded in 1947, Montrose SAR is one of the most active volunteer rescue teams in both the county and the state, responding to an average of 95 to 135 calls annually and possessing deep institutional knowledge of the treacherous local terrain. However, the complexity of the search quickly necessitated a far broader coalition. What followed was a remarkable mobilization of mutual aid, drawing in specialized teams from across the lower half of California. The list of participating agencies underscores the gravity with which the case was treated. Altadena Mountain Rescue, Antelope Valley SAR, Sierra Madre Search and Rescue, San Dimas Mountain Rescue, and Malibu SAR from within Los Angeles County were joined by teams from San Diego, Ventura, Riverside, Orange, San Bernardino, Kern, and even Tulare counties. This statewide response transformed the area around Mount Waterman into a bustling command center, a coordinated assault on the wilderness. Acting Captain Ryan A. Vienna of the Crescenta Valley Station publicly expressed his gratitude for this extensive support, acknowledging the many search and rescue teams involved and thanking federal partners for their continued assistance. The search for Monica Reza was a showcase of modern SAR methodology, combining traditional boots-on-the-ground searching with a sophisticated suite of technology. From the air, the LASD's Air Rescue 5 helicopter became a constant presence, scouring the canyons and ridges. It was supported by fixed-wing aircraft, equipped with high-resolution imaging and unmanned aerial system, drones, all aimed at spotting any sign of Reza from above. On the ground, searchers employed a variety of tactics. In a statement, the Montrose SAR team confirmed the comprehensive nature of their efforts. Quote, "We also want to assure the public that we are throwing every possible resource at this incident. To date, we have logged hundreds of search hours on the ground and in the air. Unmanned aerial systems, tracking canines, and specialized technology have all been used." End quote. This technological approach included working with experts to analyze cell phone forensic data to assist in identifying Monica's last known movements, a critical tool in establishing a more precise search area. The goal, as stated in a later debrief from Captain Vienna, was to leave, quote, "nearly no available resource untapped." Despite the overwhelming force of manpower and technology, the search teams were confronted by a formidable adversary, the mountain itself. The terrain where Reza was last seen is described as highly technical, exceptionally rugged, and steep, with punishing elevations that tested the limits of the searchers. The environment actively resisted the search, dictated and often defeating the tactics deployed. A telling example of this resistance was the use of canine units. According to a volunteer who was on the ground, search dogs were utilized on the first day, but were quickly deemed ineffective due to the harshness of the terrain and were not used on the trails thereafter. This is a significant detail, as it illustrates conditions so severe that one of the most reliable tools in the SAR arsenal was rendered useless. Sergeant Gilbert confirmed that the initial efforts focused on the established trails, where searchers looked for Reza or any sign of distress, such as discarded equipment or signs of an injury. When these grid searches yielded nothing, the operation was forced to move into the far more dangerous off-trail backcountry. This shift dramatically increased the risk to the searchers themselves and exponentially expanded the search area into a chaotic landscape of steep ravines, dense chaparral, and rocky outcrops. The failure of such a massive, well-equipped, and expertly coordinated operation to find any trace of Monica Reza after 8 days is a humbling testament to the fact that even in the 21st century, the wilderness can easily conceal its secrets from even the most determined human efforts. In parallel with the official, uniformed search for Monica Reza, a second, civilian-led effort rapidly took shape in the digital realm. Fueled by social media and a passionate local hiking community, this grassroots response became a powerful force for raising awareness. However, it also generated significant friction with law enforcement, creating a dynamic that has become characteristic of missing persons cases in the modern era. This parallel investigation revealed a fundamental tension between the public's desire for transparency and immediate action, and the official need for procedural control and investigative discipline. Within hours and days of Reza's disappearance, the Southern California hiking community mobilized online. Posts on popular forums like Reddit's r/social hiking and r/hiking served as digital town squares, issuing a call to action. One post implored users to, quote, join hiking search parties and volunteer on the ground, and to share Monica's search campaigns and news stories to increase visibility, end quote. The response was immediate. A Facebook group titled Help Find Missing Hiker Monica Reza was created, quickly becoming a central hub for coordinating updates, sharing information, and organizing volunteer efforts. A meetup page was also established seeking expert hikers, mountaineers, and operations volunteers to establish a base camp and provide logistical support, demonstrating a sophisticated level of self-organization among the civilian volunteers. These online spaces quickly evolved beyond simple coordination hubs into active, crowdsourced investigation forums. With official information limited to press releases, users began to piece together clues, analyze inconsistencies, and formulate theories. The Reddit threads, in particular, became a repository of pointed questions directed at the silent official narrative. As previously stated, users with deep knowledge of hiking protocol questioned the separation of the group, the alleged lack of water, and reports that the hikers may have been running. This public discourse was not merely speculative, it was an attempt to apply logic to a situation that seemed to defy it. The community's disbelief was palpable in comments like that of a purported neighbor who was devastated and found it incomprehensible that someone could disappear from a group setting. This sentiment was echoed by many online who expressed shock that an experienced hiker could vanish so completely, so close to her companions. The digital search party was not just looking for Monica Reza, it was also searching for an explanation that made sense. This surge of public participation, while well intentioned, inevitably clashed with the protocols of the official investigation. Law enforcement's primary concerns in such situations are the preservation of evidence and the safety of the public. On the sixth day of the search, the Crescenta Valley Sheriff's Station issued a direct plea on its Facebook page, asking the public to avoid the search area. The post explained the rationale clearly, quoting here, uncoordinated foot traffic can unintentionally interfere with tracking evidence, delay progress, or even create new emergencies. Captain Vienna later reiterated this concern, noting that the area was highly technical and difficult for inexperienced hikers. This directive created a clear point of friction. On Reddit, some users immediately relayed the official message, urging volunteers to stand down and not interfere. However, others expressed frustration, with one user writing, quote, meanwhile, the poor lady is out there dying while the gatekeepers make sure only they have access to vital information like cell pings, end quote. This comment encapsulates the core of the conflict, the public's belief in the power of numbers and open information versus law enforcement's reliance on controlled, methodical investigation. Some volunteers attempted to navigate this difficult divide, with one searcher stating they had been checking in with SAR daily to ensure we weren't in the way or covering the same ground. Now, this illustrates the delicate and often tense relationship between official responders and the passionate, digitally connected communities that now invariably form around these tragedies. The Monica Reza case became a vivid example of how every modern missing person investigation is, in reality, two investigations. The official one, bound by procedure, and the public one, driven by emotion and the relentless logic of the crowd. Every large-scale search for a missing person operates on a finite timeline, governed by factors of survivability, resources, and the diminishing probability of a successful rescue. For the search for Monica Reza, That timeline reached its conclusion after 8 days. The official announcement that followed marked a profound and somber turning point, shifting the case from a hopeful rescue mission to a long-term, uncertain investigation. This procedural change, while standard, carried immense weight, fundamentally altering the narrative of the case and the emotional landscape for all involved. On Sunday, June 29, 2025, exactly 1 week after Reza was last seen, Acting Captain Ryan A. Vienna of the Crescenta Valley Station issued a formal statement that officially changed the status of the operation. The language was precise and deliberate. Quoting here, "While today concludes our initial response phase of this operation," the statement read, "the investigation will continue by our Homicide Bureau Missing Persons Unit." End quote. This announcement did not mean the search was over entirely, but that its nature would change. Captain Vienna clarified that future search efforts will be limited and continuous as data and information further inform our efforts, he said. The era of saturation searching, with hundreds of personnel combing the mountainside, was over. It would be replaced by targeted searches, triggered only by new intelligence or specific leads. The mission had officially transitioned from one of active rescue to one of patient investigation and, implicitly, recovery. The transfer of a case to the Homicide Bureau's Missing Persons Unit is a significant development. While the unit handles all complex and long-term adult missing person cases, not just those involving suspected murder, the name itself carries a heavy connotation. For the public following the case, this move was widely interpreted as a sign that authorities no longer expected to find Monica Reza alive. On Reddit, the speculation was immediate. 8 days seems short, one user wrote. I wonder if they have some strong evidence of foul play. In reality, such a handover is often a procedural necessity. The Homicide Bureau's Missing Persons Unit is equipped for the slow, meticulous work of a long-term investigation, a task that falls outside the primary mission of a rapid deployment SAR team. Nonetheless, the public perception was powerful. The transfer signaled that the case had crossed the threshold, moving from the realm of hope into the colder, more methodical world of a potential crime or unexplained death investigation. This narrative shift was mirrored by a poignant change in the public posture of Monica Reza's family. In the first frantic days of the search, official statements consistently relayed that her family is concerned for her well-being and asking for the public's help. This was a plea for mobilization, an attempt to cast as wide a net as possible in the hope of finding her. However, Captain Vienna's June 29 statement included a new and telling message. Quote, on behalf of the family, we are conveying their request for privacy at this time. End quote. This transition from a public appeal to a privacy request marks the heartbreaking acceptance of a new reality for Monica Reza's family. The phase of public hope had ended, and a period of private grief and uncertainty had begun. The authorities acknowledged this immense emotional weight, with Captain Vienna stating, our hearts go out to Monica's family, friends, co-workers, and the community who have shown great concern for her disappearance. The case was no longer an active crisis to be solved by the community, but a heavy burden to be carried by her loved ones and a cold case file to be managed by detectives. The disappearance of Monica Reza, while uniquely tragic to her family and community, is not an anomaly. It's a chapter in the long and unsettling history of the Angeles National Forest as a place where people vanish. The forest's vastness, challenging topography, and remote corners have made it a recurring setting for accidents, crimes, and enduring mysteries. Understanding this context is crucial, as it reveals that the forest is not merely a passive backdrop for these events, but an active agent, if you will, that facilitates disappearances and complicates resolutions. The official list of missing persons in California contained numerous entries tied to the Angeles National Forest, each case a story of a life interrupted by the wilderness. Several notable cases from recent decades illustrate the diverse ways in which the forest can become a place of tragedy. Accidents and environmental dangers. In July 2022, teenage couple Ethan Manzano and Sophie Rayanne Edwards disappeared while driving along the Angeles Crest Highway. Their story ended in tragedy when their Isuzu Ascender was discovered at the bottom of a mountainside. Investigators believe their vehicle hit a berm, lost control, and rolled down the steep embankment, a stark reminder that the roads traversing the forest can be as dangerous as the trails. More recently, in October of 2024, 80-year-old Gary Robert Nutzel went missing while hiking in the Chantry Flat area, which had just reopened after a 4-year closure due to the Bobcat fire. His case, which remains unsolved, highlights how fire-altered landscapes can disorient even local hikers and create new, unforeseen hazards. And then there's foul play and concealment. The forest's remoteness has also made it an attractive location for those seeking to conceal criminal acts. In February 1992, 20-year-old model Kimberly Pandelios disappeared after telling her husband she was going to an outdoor photo shoot in the forest. A year later, her partial skeletal remains were discovered just yards from where a witness had seen her with a group of men. Her case was reclassified as a probable homicide and was eventually solved 12 years after her disappearance when a convicted offender was tied to her demise through phone records. Then there's the case of Jonathan Auger, an off-duty LASD deputy, which is even more mysterious. He vanished during a run in the Devil's Punch Bowl area of the forest on June 11, 1998. Despite extensive searches, he was never found, and his case remains an open wound for the department, shrouded in theories of foul play and internal corruption. These cases demonstrate that the wilderness can serve as both a lure for victims and a cloak for predators. Placing the Monica Reza case within this historical context reveals a clear and disturbing pattern. The forest has been the site of disappearances and deaths spanning decades, with causes ranging from tragic accidents to deliberate violence. Now, here's a few other selected notable cases from the Angeles National Forest, illustrating the recurring nature of these events. July 12, 1960, Bruce Howard Kremen disappeared and still missing. February 14, 1988, Albert O'Leary, still missing from the Angeles National Forest. Then, January 25, 2016, George Serrano Zaldivar went missing and is still missing. May 1st, 2016, Michael Patrick Flynn, missing from the Angeles National Forest, still missing. These cases provide powerful, undeniable evidence that the Angeles National Forest is a high-risk environment. The variety of cases, accidents, homicides, and complete mysteries all share a common element: the Angeles National Forest itself. Its steep terrain contributed to the fatal crash of Manzano and Edwards. Its remoteness provided cover for the demise of Pandelios and the disappearance of Ajay. And its sheer scale and ruggedness have, to date, defeated all attempts to find Nutzel and now Monica Reza. This history serves as a somber warning that the forest demands a level of respect and preparation that is too often underestimated, with each new case reinforcing its reputation as a place where the line between adventure and tragedy is easily crossed. The case of Monica Reza remains suspended in the vast and different wilderness of the Angeles National Forest. An experienced 60-year-old hiker, she stepped into the mountains for a routine weekly outing on June 22, 2025, and, for reasons that remain entirely unknown, vanished from the trail and from the lives of those who knew her. Her disappearance triggered an extraordinary response, a multi-agency search operation of immense scale and technological sophistication that scoured the rugged terrain around Mount Waterman for 8 days. Yet, the mountain kept its secrets and yielded no clues. The official conclusion of this initial response phase, and the transfer of the case to the LASD Homicide Bureau's Missing Persons Unit, marked a somber procedural end to the hope of an imminent rescue. The investigation remains open, however, a file waiting for a new lead, a chance discovery by a future hiker, or a piece of information that might finally illuminate the events of that Sunday morning. The central questions that arose in the first hours of her disappearance still linger, unanswered and echoing in the public sphere. How and why did she become separated from her companion? What transpired on that ridgeline between 7 and 8,000 feet? The story of Monica Reza is a profound and painful reminder of the dichotomy at the heart of the San Gabriel Mountains. They are Los Angeles' playground, a cherished source of beauty, solitude, and recreation for millions, but they are also a wild and unforgiving place, a landscape that does not distinguish between the novice and the expert, and that holds its secrets close. For her family, friends, and the community that rallied to find her, her absence is a tangible grief. For the public record, at this point, it's another name added to the long list of those whose stories end with a question mark in the canyons of the Angeles National Forest, a place where a person can step off a familiar path and simply disappear. Hello, friends. Welcome to our latest video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the vanishing of Sarah Eversole. Join me. Let's walk and see. In the deepest hours of the night, in a quiet rural stretch of North Florida, the digital life of Sarah Gail Eversole came to an abrupt and mystifying end. At 2:40 a.m. on Friday, March the 3rd, 2023, her phone was active, streaming videos on YouTube. However, minutes later, her digital presence was systematically erased. Her Gmail timeline was viewed and deleted. An attempt was made to access her Snapchat account, and then silence. Sarah Eversole, a 26-year-old mother, exotic dancer, and sister, had vanished. Her disappearance from Reddick, a small community in Marion County, Florida, has since unraveled a perplexing investigation, revealing a timeline fraught with contradictions, a family's agonizing battle for answers, and a person of interest who police say will simply not talk. More than 2.5 years later, the central question, one that echoes in the tireless advocacy of her family, remains painfully unanswered. Where is Sarah Eversole? For Sarah's older sister, Michelle Tullis, the days since March 2023 have blurred into an agonizing crusade for justice. Tullis has been the primary voice for her sister, transforming her grief into a relentless public campaign to keep Sarah's face in the news and pressure on the investigators she feels have failed her. Quoting here, "This is a living nightmare, not knowing exactly what has happened to Sarah," end quote. Tullis wrote in a text message to the Ocala, Florida Gazette during a public demonstration. Quoting again, "I spend the majority of my days advocating for her and keeping her humanized to the public, defending her tooth and nail," end quote. Sarah, as described by her sister, was a vibrant, free-spirited, and sometimes naive young woman. Born in Michigan, she moved to Florida at age 3 and was described as having a childish, fun spirit. She was the youngest of 7 children and, following a tumultuous childhood, was raised primarily by her aunt and uncle. She was also a devoted mother to her young daughter. This, Tullis insists, is the undeniable proof that Sarah did not leave voluntarily. Quote, "She was such a sweet human. Sarah would never leave her daughter," end quote, Tullis told WFTV-TV in Florida. This conviction is what fueled Tullis' own investigation in the critical first days of the case. Frustrated by what she perceived as a lack of urgency from law enforcement, Tullis gained access to her sister's personal accounts. There, she uncovered the chilling digital trail that now forms the backbone of the case. Tullis discovered that Sarah had been actively using her phone, watching YouTube until 2:40 a.m. on March 3rd. Later that day, at 1:47 p.m., someone attempted to access her Snapchat account, triggering a password reset email. Most ominously, her Google Gmail timeline for that night had been viewed and deleted, as reported by Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. For Tullis, this was confirmation of her worst fears. Her sister wasn't just missing. Someone had tried to cover her tracks. Her fight has been public and painful. She's organized demonstrations on the side of U.S. Highway 441, holding signs with her sister's face. She runs the Justice for Sarah Eversole social media pages and started a GoFundMe for a billboard campaign. Her desperation is palpable, as is her simmering frustration with the Marion County Sheriff's Office. Quote, "It does reopen a wound because every time I feel like they're doing something, they're not, and they do not communicate." Tullis expressed in a gut-wrenching interview with WCJB TV 20. They do not call back. Voicemails are left, emails are left. I ask for case updates all the time. End quote. At her lowest, Tullis has been forced to confront the most likely outcome, a reality she struggles to accept. Quoting again here, "I know my sister is likely deceased," she admitted to WFTV, her voice breaking. "And that hurts me because for somebody to harm her, it's just ridiculous to me. I just want justice. I just want them brought to justice." Now, the official timeline of Sarah Eversole's last known movements, pieced together by the MCSO and her family, is a puzzle with glaringly mismatched pieces. Let's go over them here. March 2nd, 2023, which was a Thursday, 7 p.m. Sarah gets off work from her job at Cafe Risque, an adult entertainment club in Micanopy, and gets a ride home from a coworker. 10 p.m., Sarah is captured on surveillance video at a Circle K convenience store at 17980 North Highway 441 in Reddick. She is not alone. 10:11 p.m. Sarah texts her sister, Michelle Tullis. The message is casual, almost whimsical, but in hindsight, deeply unsettling. She says she is, quote, getting into a random truck with some cowboys, end quote. Late night, from the Circle K, Sarah accepts a ride in a black pickup truck with two men, the aforementioned cowboys. They, along with another man named James Robinson, go to a nearby residence at 18080 North U.S. Highway 441. The home is described as a subdivided residence where Robinson lived in one half and a couple, James Schaller and Tisha McDermott, lived in the other. Then Friday, March 3rd, 2023, 1:24 a.m. A text message exchange begins between James Robinson, the man Sarah was with, and another man, 28-year-old Tyrone D. Mormon of Micanopy. According to police reports, Robinson tells Mormon that Sarah is at his home. Mormon asks if he can come to the residence. 2:40 a.m. Sarah's phone is active. She's streaming videos on YouTube. This is the last known activity confirmed to be from Sarah herself. Then, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the three witnesses at the house, James Robinson, James Schaller, and Tisha McDermott, they claim that Sarah left the residence in a newer model blue Hyundai sedan. The driver, they insist, was a, quote, Hispanic male in his mid-30s with long dark hair and a thin build, end quote. 4 a.m. Police data, recovered later, shows that Tyrone Mormon arrived at the residence in his blue 2017 Hyundai Sonata and left with Sarah. Early morning, according to MCSO, digital evidence from Mormon's phone suggested, their word, he and Sarah were at a second 24-hour convenience store in northwest Marion County. This is the last location police have been able to place her. Then, at 1:47 p.m., an unknown person attempts to log into Sarah's Snapchat account. March 5th, 2023, Sarah is officially reported missing, reportedly by her roommate. This timeline contains the case's central unresolved mystery. The witnesses at the home described a, quote, Hispanic male, end quote, but all the digital evidence points to Tyrone Mormon, an African-American male who was subsequently named the sole person of interest. The car, a blue Hyundai, is a match. Law enforcement has never publicly explained this glaring discrepancy. For months, the case seemed to languish, fueling Michelle Tullis' desperation. But behind the scenes, detectives were focusing on the digital evidence. On December 20, 2023, 9 months after Sarah vanished, the MCSO made an arrest. Tyrone D. Mormon was charged with one misdemeanor count of giving false information to law enforcement during an investigation, also described as obstruction. He was released the following day on a $10,000 bond. The arrest affidavit laid bare the state's case against him. When first interviewed by Detective Ryan Stith, Mormon allegedly, quote, claimed that he never had any contact with Sarah, end quote, and insisted he was not in town when she disappeared. According to MCSO, this was a lie. Not only did witnesses and text messages place him at the Reddick residence, but data from his own cell phone would soon become the key piece of evidence. Also, according to MCSO, Mormon also lied about the phone itself, telling detectives he had, quote, broken his phone and threw it out, end quote. Investigators obtained a search warrant and, with the help of a witness who confirmed Mormon still possessed the device, seized it. The MCSO stated that the phone's data confirmed their word that Mormon had left the residence with Sarah at 4 a.m. and suggested, also their word, their presence at the second convenience store. In March 2024, a year after Sarah's disappearance, the Marion County Sheriff's Office officially named Tyrone Mormon as the primary person of interest in her case. In an affidavit, Mormon reportedly claimed he had already told detectives, quote, everything, end quote, and was upset about being blamed for the disappearance, describing the case as he said, he said. Since his arrest, Mormon has declined to speak any further with detectives. Valerie Strong, a spokesperson for the MCSO, summarized the investigation stalemate in a statement to WFTV. Quote, our detective Ryan Stith has been continuing this investigation. During that investigation, he got a search warrant for Mormon's phone for some text messages and some other information to prove where he was at the time of Sarah's disappearance, end quote. She also confirmed Mormon's deception. Quoting here, Tyrone had lied to our detectives, saying he broke the phone and threw it away. When we were able to have people to say no, he was actually in possession of the phone, end quote. With Mormon remaining silent, though, the case is stuck. The misdemeanor obstruction charge is the only one he's faced. As one legal expert, Matthew Barhoma, explained during an appearance on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace, lying to police and deleting data is not, in itself, evidence of murder. There's still a missing piece of material evidence that links the person of interest and Sarah, Barhoma said. The silence from Mormon is matched by the silence from nearly everyone else present in Sarah's final hours. The cowboys from the black pickup truck had never been publicly identified, and the three witnesses at the residence, James Robinson, James Schaller, and Tisha McDermott, have remained out of the public eye, their contradictory Hispanic male testimony hanging over the case. The only other voices to emerge have been from the periphery. At one of Michelle Tulsa's roadside demonstrations, two of Sarah's co-workers from Cafe Risque, identified by the Ocala Gazette as Casey and Heather, showed up to offer support. One of the women, who remains unnamed, gave a simple, heartbreaking summary of the community's frustration. We want answers, she said, describing Eversole as a nice girl. This is the sentiment that continues to fuel Michelle Tullis. She's a sister haunted by digital ghosts, a deleted timeline, a final YouTube video, a text about cowboys. She stands on medians and speaks to any reporter who will listen, all to amplify a single desperate plea directed at the man who police say was the last person to see her sister alive. In a message to the Ocala Gazette, Tullis repeated the same question the sheriff's office had posted on its own Facebook page, a question that hangs unanswered over Marion County. Where did Mormon take Sarah? Sarah Gail Eversole is described as a white female, standing 5'1" and weighing 120 pounds. She has blonde hair and blue eyes. She has a distinctive tattoo on her right hip of Coco Pelli, a humpbacked flute player. A reward of at least $16,000 is currently being offered for more information. The Marion County Sheriff's Office urges anyone with any information, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, to please contact Detective Ryan Stith at 352-368-3542, or if you prefer to remain anonymous, call Crime Stoppers of Marion County at 352-368-STOP or 7867 and reference case number 23-71. Hello friends, Steve Stockton here with you. Today we're going to be talking about the vanishing cowboy, the unsolved disappearance of Ben Tiner. Join me, let's walk and see. Now, in the vast, rugged expanse of the Nicola Valley in British Columbia, where the rolling grasslands meet the dense, unforgiving wilderness, the silence of the landscape holds a chilling secret. It's a silence that echoes with the unanswered questions surrounding the strange and sudden disappearance of Ben Tiner, a 32-year-old ranch manager who rode out on horseback one crisp January afternoon in 2019 and vanished without a trace. His riderless horse, found 2 days later, was the first clue in a baffling mystery that has since evolved from a missing person case into a homicide investigation, leaving a family shattered and a community haunted by the specter of the unknown. Ben Tiner, a native of Wyoming, was the embodiment of the modern American cowboy, strong, capable, and with a deep-rooted passion for the ranching life. He had recently embarked on a new chapter as the manager of the historic Nicola Ranch near Merritt, BC. His family described him as a man with a gentle heart and a strong handshake, a man who was as comfortable in the saddle as he was exploring new cultures and meeting new people. His brother, Jack Tiner, painted a picture of a man of integrity and kindness. He was just big and strong and honest as they come, just a pure soul, he said. He wasn't the kind of guy that would get into any trouble or cause any trouble. He would help anybody for whatever they needed. That was the kind of guy my brother was. On Saturday, January 26, 2019, Tiner was last seen leaving the Nicola Ranch on a bay horse, presumably to check on cattle in the surrounding hills. It was a routine task for an experienced rancher, one he had likely performed countless times. The vastness of the British Columbia interior, with its sprawling logging roads and dense forest, was his new office. But as the weekend drew to a close, a sense of unease began to settle over the ranch. Ben Tiner hadn't returned. The alarm was officially raised on Monday, January 28, when a local logger discovered Tiner's horse, still fully saddled and bridled, on a remote logging road in the Swackham Mountain area northwest of Merritt. The discovery of the riderless horse, a potent symbol of a cowboy in distress, triggered an immediate and massive search and rescue operation. For days, the Nicola Valley became the epicenter of a frantic effort to find the missing rancher. The effort involved search and rescue teams from across the province, alongside the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, local ranchers on horseback, and volunteers on foot and on snowmobiles, combing the unforgiving territory. The search was a testament to the tight-knit rural community, with locals offering their time, resources, and intimate knowledge of the land. The conditions, however, were brutal. Frigid temperatures, deep snow, and the sheer scale of the search area presented formidable challenges. Despite the deployment of aircraft, drones, and canine units, the search yielded no sign of Ben Tiner. No footprints, no discarded equipment, not a single clue to suggest his whereabouts. After a week of exhaustive efforts, the official search was suspended, a difficult but necessary decision in the face of the harsh winter conditions. For the Tiner family, who had rushed to Merritt from Wyoming, the suspension of the search was a devastating blow. Their initial hope of finding Ben alive began to fade, replaced by a gnawing uncertainty and a desperate plea for answers. In a heart-wrenching press conference, Ben's mother, Jennifer Tiner, her voice trembling with emotion, expressed the family's anguish. To say that we are heartbroken is an understatement. Our hearts are shattered and our lives have been thrown into turmoil. To think that I will never again see us smile or hear his infectious laugh, never see him realize his dreams, never have him wrap his arms around me again, is unthinkable. As the initial search wound down, the nature of the investigation began to shift. The RCMP's Southeast District Major Crime Unit took the lead, and the language used by law enforcement became more ominous. What was once a missing persons case was now being treated as suspicious. In March 2019, the RCMP made a significant announcement. They believed Ben Tiner's disappearance may involve criminality. Sergeant Janelle Shoet of the BC RCMP stated, "Now, having had the opportunity to review all the pieces, we believe that the circumstances surrounding Mr. Tiner's disappearance may involve criminality." This announcement confirmed the growing fears of many, transforming the mystery of a lost cowboy into potential murder investigation. The question was no longer just, where is Ben Tiner, but what happened to him, and at whose hand? Over the ensuing months and years, the investigation continued, largely behind the scenes. The RCMP remained tight-lipped about the specifics of their findings, citing the need to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. However, on the second anniversary of his disappearance, they made another grim announcement. Corporal Jesse O'Donoghue of the RCMP Southeast District Major Crime Unit stated, "Based on those findings, major crime investigators have reason to believe that criminality was involved in Ben Tiner's disappearance and is the victim of a homicide." With the official declaration that Ben Tiner was likely murdered, the focus of the investigation intensified on finding his remains and bringing his killer or killers to justice. The Tiner family, in their enduring grief, increased the reward for information that would lead to the location of their son and the arrest and conviction of those responsible. This was a fund that was matched by the owner of the Nicola Ranch, bringing the total to $30,000. Richard Tiner, Ben's father, spoke of the enduring pain of not knowing. To have to live with Ben's loss is the most painful, excruciating experience ever. The loss we feel is immeasurable and has left a hole in our family that will never be filled. Now, in the absence of concrete answers, several theories have emerged to explain Ben Tiner's disappearance. Theory number one was a tragic accident in the wilderness. The most straightforward explanation, and the initial assumption of many, was that Ben Tiner had a tragic accident while riding in the remote backcountry. He could have been thrown from his horse, sustained a serious injury, and succumbed to the elements. The Nicola Valley is known for its rugged terrain, with steep ravines, dense forest, and the potential for sudden changes in weather. An experienced rider can still be caught off guard. However, several factors cast doubt on this theory. The extensive and meticulous search of the area where his horse was found turned up no sign of him. Searchers were looking for any indication of a fall, a struggle, or a makeshift shelter. They found nothing. Furthermore, Tiner was a seasoned outdoorsman, and his family believes he would have been well prepared for the conditions. The fact that his horse was found in good condition, albeit riderless, also raises questions. Had he been thrown, the horse might have remained in the vicinity. Theory number two, a staged disappearance. Another possibility, though considered less likely by those who knew him, is that Ben Tiner staged his own disappearance. This theory suggests that, for reasons unknown, he wanted to leave his life behind and start anew. While not impossible, this scenario seems incongruous with the man his family and friends described. He was excited about his new job at the Nicola Ranch and had a close relationship with his family. There were no apparent signs of personal or financial turmoil that would prompt such a drastic and deceptive act. The lack of any subsequent sightings or use of his personal accounts further weakens this theory. The third theory, foul play. The theory that has gained the most traction, and the one officially endorsed by the RCMP, is that Ben Tiner was the victim of foul play. This theory posits that he encountered someone in the backcountry who, for reasons yet unknown, caused him harm. The motive remains a subject of speculation. Was it a random act of violence, a dispute over land or resources, or something more personal? The RCMP's assertion that his disappearance involves criminality and is a homicide suggests they have evidence, though not publicly disclosed, that points in this direction. This could include witness statements, forensic evidence, or information about potential conflicts in Tiner's life, however minor they may have seemed at the time. Adding a layer of intrigue to the foul play theory is the unsolved disappearance of another man in a nearby area. Dean Morrison, a 44-year-old father of three, vanished from the Stump Lake Ranch, roughly 40 kilometers from the Nicola Ranch, in October 2013. His truck was found abandoned at the ranch where he had been working. While the RCMP have not officially linked the two cases, the geographical proximity and the fact that both men disappeared from rural ranching properties have led to public speculation about a possible connection. The disappearance of Ben Tiner has left an indelible mark on the community of Merritt and the wider ranching world. The initial outpouring of support during the search demonstrated the strong bonds that tie rural communities together in times of crisis. The ongoing mystery, however, has cast a long shadow. The question of what happened to the Wyoming cowboy who came to British Columbia in search of a new adventure lingers in the minds of many. In an effort to keep his memory alive and to support others who share his passion, the Ben Tiner Legacy Scholarship was established at Laramie County Community College in Wyoming. The scholarship supports students pursuing degrees in agriculture or related fields, a fitting tribute to a man who dedicated his life to the land. The strange and tragic disappearance of Ben Tiner is a story without an ending at this point. It's a story of a life cut short, of a family's unending grief, and of a community's lingering questions. The vast and beautiful landscape of the Nicola Valley, the same landscape that Ben Tiner so admired, now holds the key to unlocking this heartbreaking mystery. For his family, The hope remains that one day, someone will come forward with the information that will finally break the silence and bring their son home. As his mother, Jennifer, said in her plea for help, any information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, could be the missing piece to our puzzle. Until that piece is found, the question of what happened to Ben Tiner will continue to echo throughout the hills and valleys of British Columbia, a haunting reminder of the cowboy who vanished into the cold winter air. Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the vanishing in Lansdowne Station, the unsolved disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan. Join me. Let's take a walk and see. Now, in the quiet rural expanse of Pictou County, Nova Scotia, the community of Lansdowne Station is defined by its dense forest, winding rivers, and the quiet lives of its residents. It's a place where tranquility is assumed, a backdrop ill-suited for the stuff of nightmares. Yet, on May 2nd, 2025, this small community was thrust into the center of a baffling and heartbreaking mystery: the disappearance of 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan. Months later, despite one of the largest search efforts in the province's recent history and a relentless investigation, a single agonizing question remains: where are Lily and Jack? In this video, we'll examine the known facts of the case, the timeline of the disappearance, the massive search and investigation that followed, the key individuals involved, and the corrosive effect of public speculation on a family and community consumed by uncertainty. Now, let's take a look at the day they disappeared. The official narrative of the children's disappearance begins on the morning of Friday, May 2nd, 2025. Lily and Jack Sullivan lived in a rural home on Garlock Road with their mother, Malaya Brooks Murray, their stepfather, Daniel Martell, and their baby sister. The property itself is isolated, surrounded by the challenging terrain that would soon become the focus of a desperate search: thick woods, steep banks, and marshy ground. According to the account provided by Brooks Murray and Martell, the morning was unremarkable until it wasn't. They told investigators they were in their bedroom with their baby when they realized the house had gone quiet. Now, if you're a parent, you know about those sudden quiet moments that you know you need to go check. When they could no longer hear Lily and Jack, whom they said had been in the kitchen moments before, a subsequent search of the home and the immediate property yielded no sign of the children. At 10:01 a.m., Malaya Brooks Murray placed a frantic 911 call, reporting her 2 eldest children missing, believed to have just wandered off. Lily was described as 4 feet tall, weighing 60 pounds, with light brown hair and hazel eyes. She was thought to be wearing a pink Barbie top and pink rubber boots. Jack, who would turn 5 while still missing, was described as 3.5 feet tall, 40 pounds, with dark blonde hair and hazel eyes. He was believed to be wearing blue dinosaur print rubber boots. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, were on the scene by 10:27 a.m. What began as a missing persons report rapidly escalated into a massive multi-agency search operation, grounded in the terrifying assumption that 2 young children were lost in the unforgiving wilderness. So the search began in earnest. Now, the initial search was vast and desperate, operating on the hopeful theory that the children were alive but lost. Hundreds of trained search and rescue, or SAR, volunteers from across Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island descended on Lansdowne Station. The operation was a high-tech and exhaustive effort, covering a forbidding 4-square-kilometer area of dense woods. The RCMP deployed every tool at their disposal. Helicopters and drones equipped with thermal imaging cameras scanned the canopy from above, while police canine units and ground searchers navigated the difficult terrain below. An underwater recovery team was brought in to search nearby bodies of water. For days, the woods echoed with the sounds of the search, a frantic race against time and the harsh elements. But the woods, which investigators had hoped would yield 2 frightened children, offered only a confounding silence. The search yielded almost nothing. One of the few potential clues was a child's faint boot print, but its relevance could not be confirmed. More ominously, a piece of a pink blanket belonging to Lily was discovered in a tree about a kilometer from the family home. Later, court documents would reveal a second piece of the same blanket was found in a trash bag at the end of the home's driveway. After 6 days of relentless effort, the RCMP made the grim announcement that the likelihood of finding the children alive in the woods was now very low. On May 7, the large-scale SAR operation was officially scaled back. Staff Sergeant Curtis McKinnon, District Commander for Pictou County District RCMP, assured the shaken public, quote, "We're not packing up and we're not giving up," end quote. The case was transitioning from a rescue mission to a long-term investigation. And in this investigation, they tried to run through all scenarios. As the active search wound down, the police investigation, led by Northeast Nova RCMP Major Crime Unit, intensified. The case was officially added to the province's major unsolved crimes program, and a reward of up to $150,000 was offered for information leading to the children's location. Investigators began the painstaking process of following leads, interviewing witnesses, and examining the family's account. Court documents, released to the media months later, provided a glimpse into the widening scope of the investigation and the questions investigators were asking. The public's last confirmed sighting of Lily and Jack was not at their home on May 2nd, but the day before. On the afternoon of May 1, 2025, the children were seen with family members on video surveillance at a Dollarama store in the nearby town of New Glasgow. This established a critical, if incomplete, timeline. The investigation has been an enormous undertaking. By November 2025, the RCMP confirmed they had assessed over 860 tips from the public, reviewed more than 8,000 video files from the surrounding area, and conducted numerous formal interviews. Both Malaya Brooks-Murray and Daniel Martell were administered polygraph tests, though the results and their implications have not been made public. In September, a new specialized search was conducted. 2 RCMP police dogs, specifically trained in the detection of human remains, were brought in to search a 40-kilometer area near their home. This development, while standard procedure in such cases, signaled a grim turn in the investigation's focus. According to the Global News, the cadaver dogs, however, did not find any remains. Now, the RCMP has been steadfast in its public messaging, maintaining that the case is officially a missing persons investigation and that, quote, all scenarios are being considered, end quote. They have stated that there is no evidence to suggest the children were abducted, but they have also not ruled out foul play. This careful wording leaves every terrifying possibility on the table. Now, let's take a look at the family at the center of the storm. Understandably, for any family, the disappearance of a child is an unimaginable torment. For the Sullivan's parents, that private agony has been magnified by an intense and often vicious public spotlight. As the search yielded no answers, public speculation, fueled by social media and true crime forums, rushed to fill the vacuum. Much of the speculation is focused on the children's mother and stepfather. Daniel Martell, in particular, has been subject to intense online scrutiny for his public statements and demeanor. In a move that only served to fan the flames, Martell began publicly questioning the official wandered-off theory that he and Brooks-Murray had initially reported. In October, at a vigil held to mark Jack Sullivan's 5th birthday, Martell told reporters, quote, "I believe at this point in the case that they're not in the woods and they didn't wander into the woods," end quote. Again, that's from the Global News. He argued that the exhaustive search, which found no trace of the children, made it, quote, not feasible, end quote, that they were simply lost. Now, while this statement reflects a conclusion many in the community have already reached, it opened a chasm of new, darker questions. If they didn't wander off, then what happened? Malaya Brooks-Murray has been less public, but she issued a heart-wrenching statement through the volunteer missing persons group, Please Bring Me Home. In her plea, she described her life as a nightmare and the pure pain of not knowing her children's fate. Quote, "The longing I have for them to come home, back to me, is a greater feeling that I could never imagine feeling or put into words," end quote, she said, according to People magazine. Adding another layer of complexity to the family dynamic is Belinda Gray, the children's paternal grandmother. Gray, who's been estranged from the children, has become a public advocate for them, relentlessly seeking answers and criticizing what she feels is a lack of transparency from both the family and the police. "I'll never stop speaking out," Gray told CTV News. "I owe them that." Her public quest for accountability, which includes pursuing legal guardianship to access the children's school and child services records, highlights the fractured relationships at the heart of the tragedy. And there's a community here that's in limbo. The disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan has left a permanent scar on Pictou County. The case is a constant, painful presence, reminiscent of other tragic cases in the province, such as the 2020 disappearance of 3-year-old Dylan Eller in Truro. These events shattered the foundational sense of security that rural communities are built upon. The case has also become a cautionary tale about the role of social media in modern tragedy. As The Walrus magazine noted in an in-depth article, the vacuum of official information was quickly filled by, quote, a frenzy of online speculation, end quote. Armchair detectives on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and other forums have dissected every piece of available information, often generating baseless rumors and harassing the individuals involved. This rumor mill, as one local politician called it, has complicated the investigation and compounded the family's trauma. Robert Parker, the warden of the municipality of Pictou County, lamented the public's rush to judgment, urging people to stick to the facts. But in a case with so few facts, speculation becomes a destructive force of its own. In conclusion, in the 7 months after Lily and Jack vanished, the case is no closer to a resolution, it seems. It remains a mystery, defined not by evidence, but by its stark absence. The woods that were supposed to be their playground have been searched and found empty. The family home, a place of supposed safety, is now the epicenter of a criminal investigation. The narrative has fractured. The 2 young children, wearing only rubber boots, managed to wander so far into the dense wilderness that they left no trace, eluding hundreds of trained searchers and trained dogs. Or does a more sinister explanation lie behind the closed doors of the house on Garlock Road? The police, bound by procedure, continue their methodical investigation, following every tip and re-examining every statement. The family, splintered and grieving, lives in a state of suspended animation, if you will, unable to properly mourn and unable to move forward. And the community, along with a watching nation and world, is left to wait, hoping for a breakthrough that will finally break the unbearable silence and answer the only question that matters. Where are Lily and Jack? If you have any information, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, please contact the RCMP number on your screen. Hello friends, Steve Stockton here with you. This video, we're going to take a look at a concrete trap, the real horror of quicksand. Join me, let's take a walk and see. Now, for nearly a century, Hollywood has sold us a specific nightmare. A panicked adventurer stumbles into a patch of bubbling mire, flails helplessly, and is sucked beneath the surface in a matter of seconds, leaving only a hat floating on the mud. It's a staple of Saturday morning cartoons and B-movies, a danger that feels as antiquated and fictional as a falling anvil. And I admit, growing up as a child watching it on television, quicksand was a real fear when playing outside. However, the reality of hikers trapped in quicksand is both less dramatic and significantly more horrifying than the movies suggest. In the real world, you do not sink until you drown in the sand itself. Physics prevents it. The human body is roughly half the density of quicksand, meaning you will float like a cork once you are submerged to your waist. The true killer is not the depth of the hole, but the nature of the trap. Real quicksand is a prison. It holds you fast while the environment, the rising tide, the freezing night, or the scorching sun, moves in for the kill. The following accounts are not urban legends. They're documented cases of hikers who stepped onto the wrong patch of earth and found themselves fighting for their lives against a phenomenon that behaves less like a liquid and more like a monster. Now, let's take a look at the physics of the trap. To understand the hiker's ordeal, you have to understand the substance. Quicksand is a non-Newtonian fluid, a hydrogel consisting of fine granular material such as sand, silt, or clay, saturated with water. When undisturbed, it appears solid. But a sudden change in stress, like a hiking boot striking the surface, decreases its viscosity, turning the solid ground into a liquid soup. Once the hiker sinks, the sand settles out of the water and forms a densely packed sediment around the legs. This is where the trap snaps shut. The water is squeezed out, creating a vacuum effect. To pull a limb straight out of this medium requires a force roughly equivalent to lifting a medium-sized car. Quoting here, "The best way to describe it would be standing in a huge puddle of concrete that basically dries instantly," end quote, says Ryan Osman, a hiker who survived a harrowing ordeal in Utah. His description captures the terrifying reality. It's not a slow descent into the abyss, but an instant, crushing immobilization. Let's take a look at Ryan's story, the Zion ordeal, 10 hours in the ice. In February 2019, Ryan Osman and his girlfriend, Jessica McNeil, were hiking the Subway, a famous and strenuous route in Zion National Park, Utah. The trail is renowned for its tubular canyon walls and emerald pools, but in winter, it's a very cold and very desolate place. While crossing a small, shallow stream, McNeil stepped into a patch of saturated sediment and immediately sank. Osman managed to pull her free, but in the exertion of the rescue, he stepped forward and his own right leg was swallowed up to the hip. "I didn't realize my right leg was sinking all the way into the sand," Osman later told CBS News. "It felt like it had dried instantly. I couldn't move my leg at all." The situation deteriorated with terrifying speed. The couple was miles from the trailhead with no cell service. They tried to dig him out, but the nature of quicksand makes manual digging futile. As soon as you scoop the sand away, the water-saturated sludge flows back into the void, resealing the trap. Realizing he was immovable, Osman made the agonizing decision to send McNeil to hike out alone for help. He was left waist-deep in the freezing mud as a winter storm rolled in. About 30 minutes after she left, it started snowing really hard, so I was stuck in the water while it was pouring snow, Osman recalled. The physical toll of the trap began to set in. This is a medical reality known as crush syndrome or compartment syndrome, where the pressure of the sand cuts off circulation, leading to potential nerve damage or the release of toxins into the blood once the limb is freed. Alone in the dark, suffering from hypothermia, Osman's mind went to dark places. "I sat there for 12 hours and I knew for sure I was dead," he told Outside Magazine. "I started to think about what I could do to die faster, but I didn't want to drown if I fell again. That would be the worst way to go." Rescue eventually arrived in the form of park rangers who had to utilize a mechanical pulley system to break the suction holding Osman's leg. It took significant mechanical force to free him. He was airlifted to a hospital where he eventually recovered, though he suffered muscle damage from the crushing pressure of the sand. Now let's take a look at an Alaskan nightmare. While Osman faced the danger of exposure, hikers in Alaska face a far more urgent threat: the tide. The mud flats of Turnagain Arm, near Anchorage, are composed of glacial silt, a fine ground flour of rock that creates some of the deadliest quicksand on Earth. Locals know the mantra, "Stay off the mud flats." But to visitors, the vast, flat expanses of gray silt look like solid beaches. The most tragic and well-documented case occurred in July 1988, involving a young woman named Adina Dickinson. She and her husband were gold dredging on the mud flats when their ATV got stuck. While trying to push it out, Adina's leg became ensnared in the silt. The Turnagain Arm is famous for its boar tide, a rush of water that can raise the water level by dozens of feet in a terrifyingly short window. As Adina struggled, the silt liquefied around her leg and then hardened, locking her in place. Rescuers arrived, but they were fighting a ticking clock. The physics of the glacial silt trap were insurmountable in the time they had. They tried to dig her out, but the hole filled with water. They tied a rope around her and used a vehicle to try and pull her free, but the suction was so intense, the force required to remove her would have dislocated her joints or even severed her leg. Tragically, the tide rose faster than they could work. Adina Dickinson drowned in the rising waters despite the presence of rescuers just feet away. It remains one of the most harrowing examples of the immovable object nature of quicksand. This danger persists today. In May 2023, another man became trapped in the same mudflats. Fortunately, rescue technology has improved. Firefighters used a specialized tool called a mud lance, which injects high-pressure water and air into the silt around the trapped leg. This process, known as liquefaction, used intentionally this time, breaks the suction of the vacuum. The man was extracted just minutes before the freezing tide would have reached him. Now, let's look at a modern rescue, the stuck quicksand hiker. Even experienced hikers with modern technology can fall victim to the trap. In a very recent case from December 2025, a seasoned thru hiker named Austin Dirks found himself immobilized in Arches National Park, Utah. Dirks was hiking the Hayduke Trail, a rugged 800-mile route, when he stepped into what looked like a shallow stream bed in Courthouse Wash. In seconds, he was trapped up to his knee. Unlike the movie characters who flail and sink, Dirks found himself in a stalemate. "I tried my trekking poles," he would write later. "They sank to the handles the moment I leaned on them. The stream water rushing past him filled every hole he tried to dig, and the angle of his leg became torture." He says, quote, "My knee bent to a painful 45 degrees over my foot, and I could not straighten it," end quote. Dirks possessed a Garmin inReach satellite messenger, a device that likely saved his life. With frozen fingers, he typed a message that was as brief as it was terrifying. "Stuck quicksand hiker." The rescue operation highlighted the sheer difficulty of extraction. It wasn't enough to just pull. Search and rescue teams had to deploy traction boards and ladders to distribute their own weight so they wouldn't become victims themselves. Then they had to carefully excavate his leg, battling the freezing water and the refilling sand. "When they finally pulled me free," Dirks recounted, "my shoe almost tore off but held on. My leg had no feeling left in it and nearly collapsed when I put weight on it." Now let's look at the psychology of the stuck. What connects Osmond, Dickinson, and Dirks is the psychological shock of the trap. In all three cases, the ground, the one element humans rely on to be static, betrayed them. "You see this stuff in movies, and you don't think it would happen to you," Osmond said. This cognitive dissonance often leads to panic, which speeds up the entrapment. When a person struggles, they essentially churn the mix, forcing more water out of the suspension and packing the sand tighter around their limbs. Dr. Daniel Bond, a physicist who published a study on quicksand in Nature magazine, confirmed that it is impossible for a human to be fully submerged. "You cannot drown in quicksand," Bond stated, "but if you get stuck, the sand settles around your feet and forms a sediment that acts like a solid. You can get out, but it requires patience and specific technique." In conclusion, the reality of quicksand is not the fast-paced, breathless drowning depicted in, say, The Princess Bride. It's a slow, cold, and crushing ordeal. It's the panic of a limb that won't move, the pain of a knee twisted against the weight of the earth, and the terrifying realization that you're rooted to the spot while the elements close in. Hikers are taught to look for bears, to watch for storms, and to carry enough water, but the ground itself remains an overlooked predator. As Ryan Osmond's Puddle of Concrete proves, the earth does not need to swallow you whole to kill you. It only needs to hold you tight enough and long enough for something else to finish the job. The survival advice from experts contradicts our instincts. Do not struggle, do not have a friend pull you, and if possible, lean back to distribute your weight. But as these cases show, once a trap is set, the only thing that matters is how fast help can arrive. Well, friends, there you have it. As always, I look forward to your comments on this one. As for me, I'll see you a little further on down the trail. Watch out for that quicksand. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time. Be good to each other, and tell your animals I said hi.